as you know, in the UK, we have this thing called the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and it is kind of the British trans community's enemy number one at the moment. It's run by some single-issue anti-trans activists. It was originally created as an organisation which is meant to advocate for the human rights of minority groups. So they're meant to be like a non-government kind of government body that the government kind of controls but kind of doesn't. There's meant to fight for people's, on behalf of, ordinary people's human rights. And the Conservatives managed to replace the people leading it with a load of people who hate human rights, and now it's like this anti-human rights organisation. The EHRC is meant to be protecting trans people's human rights as well as gay people and disabled people, etc. But it's also meant to cover things that affect everyone. For example, the right to protest. So in the UK, we actually have like a legally enshrined right to protest. And it is actually a fundamental part of democracy. Like, protesting is very important in general, just like theoretically on a global scale. You have to be able to protest in order to have a functioning democracy. So I think that some people probably don't really care about what's going on at the EHRC, because the EHRC under the current leadership only really seems to be attacking trans people and disabled people and not doing anything else. So if you don't really care about those groups, or you don't really pay attention, they're not like actively coming for you necessarily. However, obviously the trans community fucking hates them. And there is a protest going on right now, as far as I understand, outside the London and I think also Scottish offices for the EHRC by Trans Kids Deserve Better. Trans Kids Deserve Better are the group who put a load of bloody handprints on, I think it was on the EHRC building. They also handed Wes Streeting a coffin. They've been doing loads of, like, I think they're the ones who let all the bugs out in the LGBT Alliance conference. They're doing lots of direct action stuff, and they're pretty, like, incredible as a group. So anyway, they're basically occupying EHRC, which is pretty cool. So good for them. And the EHRC tried to get an emergency injunction to basically make protesting against them outside their offices illegal, and like an actual criminal offence. So this group, not only which is supposed to be defending trans people's rights and uses all of its energy to take them away, is also meant to be defending a right to protest, and is now like, just, I mean, it makes sense for how terrible the current leadership of them are, but the fact that they're using their powers to actively try and shut down protest is just crazy. And the way in which the court systems work, as far as I understand, we're going to see this in a minute from this legal opinion. I think it would mean that if it weren't for Good Law Project, who are a pro-human rights legal group in the UK, stepping in and defending or opposing this attempt to make protest illegal, then there wouldn't have even really been any defence at all. It would have been just like the EHRC talking to a judge. So it's good that Good Law Project, GLP, stepped in, and they were able to win. They managed to beat the EHRC, and they failed in the injunction, and now the protest is allowed to carry on, and you won't get arrested for protesting against them. So that's good. So let's just read what, like a brief summary from what Good Law Project are saying was going on. Article 11 protects your right to protest by holding meetings and demonstrations with other people, proclaims the website of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. On their own website, they're claiming to be defending your right to protest whilst also actively trying to make protesting illegal. Yet today, apparently at its bidding, its landlord is seeking an injunction against protests outside its offices in Vauxhall. The injunction, if it granted, will last until 31st of January 2026. the date upon which the EHRC's license terminates, and prohibits anyone without the consent of the EHRC landlords entering, occupying, or remaining upon all or any part of the commercial premises. Which are just crazy. Like, so the literally just entering here is covered. So even if you're just a trans person who isn't necessarily actively protesting, they could be like, hey, you're not allowed here, and then just arrest you. It's possible you may be able to protest on the public pavement or road outside the office, though you would risk criminal conviction. But otherwise, the order creates a world in which someone protesting against its actions could be found in contempt of court and would risk imprisonment if they even enter the forecourt. So really, like, grim, authoritarian bullshit going on here. Bearing in mind, the reason that people are protesting against them isn't because they disagree about politics and like, oh yeah, we think that we should be taxing the top 1%, 50%, and we think it should be 45%. You know, that's like a politics disagreement. It's not like, oh, should we be building nuclear submarines or not? That's definitely a like geopolitics thing. Is literally this group is saying we should take away the human rights and freedoms of a group of people, and we're going to do it without even involving this group of people. Bearing in mind that the EHRC put out its interim guidance, which said that trans people, trans women and trans men should be able to be banned from men's and women's spaces, both banned from both sets of spaces. So that would include men's toilets and women's toilets, men's changing rooms and women's changing rooms, without discussing with a single trans person, without involving a single person who this affects at all. So they just straight up said, trans people should be banned from public. We haven't even talked to a trans person. And then, obviously, people are going to protest against that. And they're saying it should be illegal to protest against us. Just insane how, like, evil the people running the ship at the moment are. The application was sparked by an entirely peaceful encampment by Trans Kids Deserve Better, which concluded as planned on Friday the 30th. So I don't think they are still there, but maybe they are. I don't know. But I'm sure someone will be back. They left loads of signs. Its chair was appointed by Liz Truss. So if you're not British, you might not even know the name Liz Truss. But Liz Truss was our Prime Minister. She's the one who lost in the survival competition with a lettuce. She was Prime Minister for like 1 week and 1 day or something. But in that time, actually, I think maybe when she was in a previous position in the previous Prime Minister. Anyway, at some point, Liz Truss, who is a fucking idiot, put Kishwa Falconer in charge, and solely because she hates trans people. Although it is obliged to defend free speech, she said it is unacceptable to question the integrity of the regulator. Like, it just sounds like something out of a fucking, like, dystopian sci-fi comic book with Judge Dredd in or something. It is unacceptable to question the integrity of the regulator. The regulator could be a bad... like, it's like her with, like, a robot arm or something, and some 80s style hover car. Although it's bound to protect the rights to protest, it appears to be seeking to ban protest outside its offices. This, like, in any kind of healthy media environment, which the UK absolutely does not have, this should be a major, like, news story. The group that's meant to defend your right to protest is trying to ban you from protesting against it taking away your human rights. Like, what the fuck? Just unreal. So anyway, Good Law Project intervened and they won, which is great. So we actually have a thing here from Joe Malm, who's the head of Good Law Project.
I'm standing outside the Central London offices of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. This is the body, you'll remember, that is in charge of protecting the right to protest. But following a week-long occupation and encampment of the space outside the EHRC by our French townsmen deserve better, the EHRC's landlord sought an injunction to stop anyone protesting outside its offices. I would be committing a criminal offence if that application for an injunction had succeeded by standing here and talking to you today. Good Law Project.
Sorry to stop it there. Isn't that completely insane that it would be a criminal offence for him to just stand outside and record a video? Like, that's the level of... Like, it's not like saying, oh, yeah, if they turned up with a bunch of tents and set them up in the lobby and started having a barbecue and brought their dogs and, like, you know, brought a pool or something, oh, they should be allowed to move them outside or something. It's literally like, if you turn up and try and do a video about trans rights, you're going to jail. Mental.
Was in court earlier today, trying to resist the EHRC's landlord's application for an injunction, and we succeeded. The judge said that the EHRC could not criminalise lawful protest outside the EHRC's offices.
We also had a legal opinion here from ITN, which discusses the ruling, which was interesting. There's some stuff we know at the start, but it also says Good Law Project's application to intervene was granted and GLP provided written and oral submissions on why the injunction should not be granted. Because the injunction was sought against persons unknown, the protesters, had GLP not intervened, the court would not have had the benefit of submissions opposing the injunction. So, just like how we just had this Supreme Court ruling where not a single trans person was allowed to present their arguments against the case being made, and a group of anti-trans people were allowed to, and then they decided to strip away trans people's rights without involving a single one of us, they were again trying the same thing here. Fortunately, this time, Good Law Project were allowed to intervene. The Supreme Court, like, explicitly denied any trans people from being involved. Here, that wasn't the case, fortunately. But it just shows how, like, bullshit the whole system is. That if it weren't for a group which, I mean, how many groups are going to risk their reputation going basically up against the state, take on these huge financial risks to fight on behalf of one of the poorest, like, lamest for funding groups in the country? I mean, Good Law Project probably do make some money over this. I don't know if they break even on the trans cases they do. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I hope they do. I hope they make money off it. But there's no way they're making the big money that the gender critical legal groups are. If they hadn't have done this, then possibly we would have not even had an argument in favour of human rights here, and we would have just lost the right to protest against the EHRC outside their offices, which is just crazy. So, yeah, like, pretty grim. It says, partner at this group. I don't know, ITN. I was just linked this by a trans legal person who I trust. Persons unknown injunctions against protesters have become increasingly common in recent years, and their impact on freedom of speech and assembly are far-reaching. The consequences for anyone found to be in breach can include imprisonment and significant liability for costs. This case is a reminder that the rights of protesters remain a central consideration, and that applications for injunctions of this type can be successfully resisted. So this isn't just good for trans people. This is good for anyone who plans to protest against anything. Because this pattern of an attempt by people who seek to oppress and silence others, like, there's a legal route that they can do it, which is this persons unknown thing, which is sometimes successful, and this is an example of people standing up to it. So that is good, and that has helped other people too. So it's not just helping trans people. So if you're not a trans person, you're watching this thinking, how does this affect me? You didn't, like, your right to protest is slightly stronger, And you might think, why would I want to protest? Well, if the government ever comes for your human rights, you might want to stand up and say something about it. But also had this comment here from a trans legal person on Blue Sky. The most troubling part of the EHRC landlord's injunction application was that the lawyers attempted to ban future protests before they even happened, a form of prior restraint. They tried to justify the injunction by citing vague threats of direct action from trans kids deserve better. But then they argued that it should apply to everyone, simply because they can't always tell who is part of that group. And I know that the context is slightly different, but just hearing gender critical people make a "we can't always tell" argument is just incredible. Because, like, yeah, I mean, of course you can't tell. You can't tell who's trans or not. You can't tell who supports trans rights or not. I mean, probably if they're a normal looking person and they look like they have some kind of empathy or morality at all, and they're not wearing the uniform of the people who work there, then they probably support trans rights, and they're probably gonna protest against you, but you don't know. So maybe they'll be arresting the mailman and everything. Anyway, the EHRC loses again, which is good.